gold, frankincense, and myrrh, which is their way of dimming the light. Great. That's all I can see. Well, welcome again. Thanks very much for coming. And this is a time of year, or rather the times when people most likely go to church if they don't usually, is Christmas and weddings and funerals. So if you're in that category, we're very grateful that you came here. I genuinely mean that. The only time church service, a whole church service rather than songs of praise, is put on the TV is Christmas, and also the royal weddings and royal funerals and coronations. So why is Christmas, the birth of Jesus, still up there as the big one that people will come to or watch? What's significant about him, and how does he still touch our lives to make us want to do that? And the last reading, all the readings I could have said something about, but the last reading tells us something about it. It shows that Christmas is about a coronation and a royal wedding and a funeral. And that's from the gifts that these wise men give: gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And those gifts show the connection between Jesus and you. Now, first, who are these wise men? And partly I'm asking you to indulge me in this because I enjoy sort of history and archaeology and things like that. But also, I think it helps us picture the scene. Ministers often around this time of year start debunking the Christmas story, and apologies for the times when I do that. But actually, I think they show something that's even more majestic. So the word David read, interestingly, I don't think how Ali Raza was meant to be reading, but he's gone down ill with a load of other people. Ali Raza is from where they're from. We had David instead read. Some English translations say something like wise men, some say magi. So magi, where we get the word magic from, they are these foreigners, these people from a different part of the world where Matthew is writing from. Matthew is Jewish, and he writes this very Jewish style, all about how Jesus fulfills the Old Testament. Where his carol services start with his Old Testament readings promising Jesus would come. But the start and the end of Matthew's Gospel is all about how Jesus came for everyone, for people who are not like him, people from all over the world, from outside and beyond. What I generally find in something like Chelmsford, that the church is the most multicultural group of people you can spend time with. It's great here in this particular church, people from all around the world come and worship with us. But actually, we do know a little bit more about them. Very significant things that would have meant something to Herod and the first readers of Matthew. So these magi were a priestly class of Persians. They had this religion called Zoroastrianism. Some people still follow that. A friend of mine, a church minister, but used to be a Zoroastrian. He's a Persian Zoroastrian. They're part of the Parthian Empire. You know the saying a Parthian shot? People often say a parting shot. It's meant to be a Parthian shot because the Parthians were famous for when they're retreating, they'd fire arrows over their shoulder to shoot the people chasing them. So if anyone gives you a Parthian shot, you're winning the argument because they're retreating from you. So these Parthians, they resisted the Roman Empire. So the Roman Empire expanded and then stopped at what sort of the Iran-Iraq area that we know today. And they invaded part of the Roman Empire, invaded Judah in 40 BC. And Herod had to flee and go to Rome. And to win back Jerusalem, he needed the help of Mark Antony, something you would have heard. So when we read this bit of Matthew's Gospel, don't think of three old men with big beards on camels. There'd have been loads of people coming with an armed escort. And they're asking Herod where the king is. And that explains Herod's fear. Last time a bunch of these guys turned up, he had to flee to Rome. AD 66, a delegation of them go to Emperor Nero in Rome. It was apparently a very impressive delegation. So the first readers of Matthew are kind of going, contrasting what's going on here. King Jesus and Emperor and so on. So it's not quite the Christmas card image of the three kings and so on. Rather, it's international delegation with three gifts with their meanings. So I want to think about those three gifts and their meanings. So the first one is a coronation, gold. Gold in the Bible is associated with kingship and splendor, particularly God's kingship. So hundreds of years BC, God promised King David that one of his descendants is going to come from Bethlehem, the same town as him, and he's going to rule the world, and nations will bring him gifts. This king is God's king who brings God's rule. Sometimes it's even in the Old Testament put as God himself coming to reign as king. And Jesus brings all these promises together. His rule is going to be good. It's going to be about provision and protection. Unlike politicians, now I'm not going to knock them. Who'd want to be one of them? They try their best, I'm sure. But Jesus actually knows what is best for his people, and he can deliver. But Jesus' kingship is a threat too. So imagine this delegation of Magi and Parthian soldiers turning up at Herod's palace and asking, where is the king? It'd be a bit like the president of China with a huge security team driving up the lawn of the White House and saying, hey, where's Donald? And then when he turns up going, right, where's the real president? And just imagine how someone like he would take that. That's kind of what's happening to Herod. He takes it as a threat. And if you read on past where we just looked, he goes to extraordinary lengths to make sure any threat of the king is removed, violently so, as he rejects Jesus as king to keep his own position safe. And today we find Jesus' ultimate claims uncomfortable. We reject him to keep control of our own life, because Jesus makes that higher claim that he's boss over all of life, but also he's worth it. So Christmas is an invitation to come to the king. It's about a coronation. It's about a funeral in myrrh. Now, not long after our son was born, so our son is just, we can work out probably which one my son is, which two is not, with all due respect to Colin and James. So the lanky floppy head one. So when he was born, just after he was born, we had him baptised. And not to fulfill stereotypes, but a friend of ours from Scotland came down and gave him a gift of whiskey, which we looked puzzled at. She said, it's for when he's older. And he's now 19 and the bottle remains in a cupboard unopened. Now, if I wrote a list of inappropriate gifts for babies, quite high up would be whiskey, and also up there would be myrrh. Actually, it's the most expensive by weight of the three gifts these wise men bring. And it was used for embalming kings for burial. So perhaps more inappropriate than giving a baby a bottle of whiskey is to give them a coffin and say it's for when he's older. Now, what strikes me every time we do a service like this and other services around Christmas is all the Bible readings we read at Christmas. These Old Testament readings predicting Jesus' birth hundreds of years before, and the bits about his birth, each of them has something that hints towards his death. Because the core of Jesus' mission, you can't end at Christmas, but they strain towards Good Friday and Easter, the cross and the resurrection. Jesus was literally born to die. Why? Well, the consequences of what we just thought about him being king and rejecting him as king and having us as king instead. If you continue down that path of not wanting to know Jesus as king, not recognizing him as son, what is the best that you can expect? That we'd be separated from him forever, and therefore that is good. All the problems in the world have that as its root cause. And justice demands some sort of payment from us for that. And so the Christmas story points towards Good Friday and Easter, that Jesus died in the place of sinners, that Jesus was separated and bore our sin so we don't have to. But that's not the end. He rose so that we might be risen from the dead as well. The name, as we heard a moment ago, means Jesus saves. So Jesus means the Lord saves, the Lord God saves. And the last one is, it's about a wedding, frankincense. So the result of Jesus' death is forgiveness from God, and that means a restored relationship. And incense in the Old Testament was what they used in worship in the temple, and it was a symbol of prayer. So they light the incense, smoke comes up, it smells nice, and it goes up, and God smells it. And it's a way of offering yourself to God. And his people are pleasing to him. And he goes, I want to answer their prayers. I want to be with you. They smell nice. And Jesus has this priestly role, this go-between between the people and God. So he reveals God to us and us to God. So Christmas is God come to us in human form. And then Christ bringing us to God through his death and resurrection. So why did I say wedding? Well, gold, frankincense, and myrrh, all mentioned throughout the Old Testament with the ideas behind them just mentioned. But twice they appear together. So Psalm 45 is a song for King David's wedding. And what happens at his wedding is the kings of the nations come to him at his wedding, bringing gifts of incense and myrrh, and his bride is dressed in gold. And then in Song of Songs, it's a love song celebrating the love between a husband and a wife. And it's associated with David's son, King Solomon. And at the centre of the book is the wedding service. And the guests, including kings, come and they bring gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And both of those bits of the Bible, even way before Jesus was born, were taken to point beyond themselves. That throughout the Old Testament, God calls himself the husband and calls Israel his bride. The New Testament does something similar, Jesus as the husband and the church as the bride. That God's people always believed that there was going to be this special event in the future. God created marriage even to give us a glimpse of how Christ's love is for his people. So sometimes the church, and I'm guilty of this probably, when we talk about Jesus dying for us, what I may inadvertently sound like is we were strangers with God, but now he tolerates us. Rather, we were enemies of God, and now he's crazy about us. He delights in us and he enjoys us because he's made us delightful. How much does God love us? We just need to look to two places, the crib and the cross. He loves us enough that he would send Jesus into the world to die for us. So Christmas is God's proposal to the world to come to know God in Christ. Emmanuel, as we heard, means God with us. And there's a small glimpse here about the love that Christ has for us. And a picture here of how history ends. All the nations coming to Christ as King, bowing down and offering themselves as they accept his proposal. And that's the invitation for you this Christmas, to bow to the King, accept his death for you, and offer yourself to him, to be united to Christ. Now, both the readings about the shepherds and the wise men, what do? They're directed by either an angel or a star. And what do? They go. They investigate for themselves. So don't take my word for it. Look into it yourself. It's interesting, quite often grown-ups say, well, I haven't really thought about this since I was a child at a Bible or something. So it's very interesting to look at this again with fresh eyes as a grown-up. And as a church, we like I said at the start, we love answering people's questions. In our regular services, we look at something from the Bible. Happy to have questions asked. We do the course I mentioned, Christianity Explored. There's some of these invitations. The QR code will come up at the end. But this Christmas, there's an offer for you. Accept the proposal in front of you. And some of those themes are going to be mentioned now, and our last carol we're going to sing this evening. Do join us for some refreshments afterwards, but let's stand as we sing Hark the Herald.